So we know how to write a linear equation if I give you a point and an intercept. And if I give you a graph, you know how to write it into y equals mx plus b form. So now, what happens if I give you a point and a slope? There's a certain way in which we can still make it fit the form y equals mx plus b, and that's what I'm going to do. We're going to start with the point-slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This really isn't that far-fetched. Remember, the variables that stay are going to be my y and my x, because those are constantly changing in the graph. The only ones that are going to change are this y1, the slope, and the x1. So, we've been evaluating formulas since the second day of class. So it's the same thing. I'm just going to input values and I'm going to spit it out. So here is my x1 value and here is my y1 value. And my slope equals 2. So if my formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, all I need to do is plug in values. Y is going to remain the same. Minus is going to remain the same. Y1 comes down and it's 1 equals my slope is 2, so I plug in 2 for m. My parenthesis comes down, my x comes down, my minus sign comes down, and x1 is now going to be equal to 4. I close parentheses, and now I just distribute out. So I have y minus 1 equals 2 times x, 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, and then I solve for y. Add 1 to both sides, and I get y equals 2x minus 7. And that gives me my slope-intercept form. Now I have my beginning point, which is negative 7. My slope is 2. So then from negative 7, I can go up 2 over 1. So that is the point-slope formula. I'm going to do it again using this one right here. So if I have a formula, I want to write it down. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm just going to plug in values. Y stays the same. Here's an x value, here's a y value, minus y1 is 4, equals my slope is 1/2, my x stays the same, and minus x1 is 2. And I distribute and solve for y. So here, y minus 4 remains. I have 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times negative 2 is negative 1. I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I get y equals 1/2 x plus 3. So now, my beginning point is 3, that y-intercept, and my slope is 1/2. Okay? So that's using the formula. I am going to show you another way in which to do this. I do not care which way you use, as long as you give me this form, slope-intercept form, when we're done. Okay, it must be in slope-intercept form. So, let's take a look at number 3. We know that we've been using y equals mx plus b since the beginning of this unit. I already know my slope is 2/3, so half my problem is done. I just need to find out what b is. Once I find out what b is, then I can just simply plug it in, y equals mx plus b. So, I'm going to take this information. This is an x value, this is a y value, this is my slope. So if I plug in 0 for y, if I plug in 2/3 for slope, and negative 6 for x, it is going to allow me to solve for b. Remember, we can only have one unknown value if I'm solving an equation. So I have an x, I have a y, I have my slope, and we've seen this form plenty of times. So now let's use it and solve for b. So 0 equals 2/3 times negative 6. Remember, cross-reduce and multiply. So negative 4 plus b. And now b equals 4. So now that I have my slope and now that I have my beginning point, now I can just say y equals 2/3 x plus 4. And I'm done. Of course, I can always use the formula. So let's say I have this using the formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I would say y minus 0 equals 2/3 x minus a negative 6. Be careful when you have minus a negative because it becomes positive. I can distribute, so y minus 0 stays the same. Really, Minus 0 is nothing, so we can just keep that as y. Y equals 2/3 x. 2/3 times 6 is 4. Notice we're going to get the same answer regardless of which way we do it. So some students like this because they don't have to memorize one other thing, but it's always helpful to have a formula, and you get the final answer just by plugging in values. So let's go ahead and do a couple more. I'll do number 7. Let's get some more practice with just using y equals mx plus b because that's what we see time and time again. So my y value is -5. My slope is 1/3. My x value is -12. And it allows me to solve for b. So remember, half my problem is done. I have my slope. I'm just trying to pick out my beginning point, my y-intercept. So here I have -5 equals 1/3 times -12 is -4 plus b. To get b by itself, I add 4, and I get b equals -1. Now that I have my slope and now that I have my beginning point, I can say y equals 1/3 x minus 1. And voila, point-slope form. Let's do another one in point-slope form. Let's go down here to number 11. And I have y equals mx plus b. My y value is -1. Equal sign comes down. My slope is -4/3. My x value is -6. My plus comes down for finding b. So now I have -1 equals -4/3 times a -6, and negative times a negative is a positive. And then I can cross-reduce my 3 and 6 and get 4 times 2, which is 8. We've been over that in class. That's why I'm kind of glossing over this in the notes. And then I subtract 8 on both sides, and I get b equals -9. Well, now that I have my slope, and now that I have my beginning point, I can say y equals -4/3 x minus 9. And that's my answer. So either way you want to do it, point-slope formula. The reason it's called point-slope formula is because you were given a point and you were given a slope. So point-slope formula. Crazy how they came up with that name. Or you could just use what you're used to, y equals mx plus b. Either one of these will get you to that place where you need to be, where it's y equals mx plus b. Okay? All right, so that's it for this lesson. If you have questions, come see me in tutoring.